You are being recorded now.
All right. So we'll just hop on in. For those of you who weren't here for the first one, this is the second part of the kitchen support. The first kitchen support that I talked about earlier, we went through the preparation stages of menu creation prior to the day of the event, flavor palettes, ways that you can help do those kinds of things with the feast stewards prior to and up to the day of the event before you get to feast. This portion is going to concentrate on the roles and responsibilities that you find in the kitchen and out of the kitchen during the feast. So right before, up to, and during the feast is what we're going to talk about here. So just to recap for those of you who weren't here earlier today, my name is Sabina Fahy. I'm in the Barony of Forgotten Sea in Callantyre. I've kind of got voluntold to come and do these classes because I have a blood pact with Michelle Araj, i.e. Isabel de la Hoya. So anytime that she says, hey, I'm doing this and I don't think anybody's going to show up, I obligatorily get conscripted to do such a thing. Also, I have a yellow belt, so I don't care. So that's fine too. But yes, I do have a blood pact. And I get voluntold a lot. That's fine. And don't give that shocked face, Isabel, because it is funny and you know it's true. So we're going to hop right into it. The first thing that we talked about in part one, no, Vicky. First thing we talked about was a self-assessment. And in the self-assessment, we talked about your commitment level to the project. It can be very little, it can be very big. It depends on what you want to do. You can devote a day, you can devote a lot more time than that prior to, or 20 minutes or 30 minutes. You do not have to spend all day in the kitchen to be effective kitchen support. I want to definitely emphasize that. But I also want to emphasize the fact that if you are going to commit, please stay committed, especially the day of or during, okay? Availability, what does that look like for the day or prior to? What do you want your participation level to be? All three of these are very ingrained with each other. The other one is your physical ability. Can you not stand on your feet for 12 or 14 hours? Then you may not want to do something all day. What's your mental capacity like? Do you want to do just really simple tasks, things of that nature? Or do you want something more complicated? Can you handle that? Then, of course, knowing your limitations, what you can and can't do. So make sure that you've reviewed all of this self-assessment. So in looking back, and I've asked some of these questions, does all of these things still hold true? Okay. We've had times when weather has interfered. God forbid, some kind of physical accident has kept somebody from coming, an illness in the family, something like that. So that may have changed your commitment. It could have changed your availability. It could change your physical ability. Maybe you're really, really burned out. Something's happened either at work, something has happened in the SCA. Let's face it, that happens a lot. Sometimes you've just been going and going and going for weeks and weeks at different events, and you're like, I can't do it today. I can commit to doing this portion, but not this portion. So as soon as you know that, please let the feast stewards know. And that's fine. We understand when things happen like that. Other kitchen support staff understand when things like that happen, but please let them know as soon as possible. Maybe you get there and you find that you have free time because your classes got canceled, something changed. Again, any kind of these situations, and you're like, hey, I have some time now, so I can go and do this. Or this thing isn't happening in my life anymore, like maybe soccer season or baseball season or football season for one of your children, or maybe you're into fantasy football or whatever else, and you have time to do this, so you can get in on being kitchen support staff before the event. Or again, it comes up during that time. The other thing is do you want to learn something new, a new aspect of SCA culture? Because after spending a couple of years in the kitchen with my friends, I find out that SCA cooks have a whole subculture in and of themselves. And it's not a bad thing. Don't laugh. but it's very different. And I found that from Callantyre to Glen Aubin to Onsteora, they're all different about how they do things in their kitchen and about how they help each other or joke with each other or do things like that. And one of the reasons I find being kitchen support staff so fulfilling is because I've made so many new friends by just sitting there working alongside them, because, you know, blood is thicker than water, the blood of the covenant. And when you cut yourself in the kitchen, everybody gets around you real quick. Sorry, Beelfer. So, you know, things happen where you have this coming together of folks. And, you know, food, in the United States, we definitely base so many things around food. Thanksgiving, Christmas. I mean, yesterday, 4th of July, we had people over at our house. It was food when we got finished doing our stuff. We base so many things around food, you know. We live to eat. We don't eat to live. And finding yourself in this culture is very unique. And you'll find people who are gung-ho about everything being period down to the servingware and the cooking techniques and whatever. And then you'll find people who are like, yeah, we want the main dishes to be this way, but we can kind of fudge on this. And then you'll find some people who are like, I just want it to taste good and I don't care. Because period Rotel dip is a thing in some kingdoms. And that's totally legit if that's what you want. Okay. So like I said, you'll find a lot of different things, and being part of this micro culture in SCA in general is really, really awesome. So if you like food at all, this is definitely a place to be. Okay. All right. So after we've reviewed ourselves and we've asked ourselves these questions, let's look at the crucial supporting roles that happen during feast. Okay. The first one is the hall steward. For me, the hall steward does everything outside of the kitchen. Okay. So if it's outside of the kitchen doors, that's what they work on. And all of these are going to have their own slides. We're going to go through some more of these in depth. So I'm just going to kind of throw them out there. The next one is the server, obviously. And they serve the food. The next one is your expediter. And a lot of people don't have this, and that's fine. They are the right hand of the feast steward inside the kitchen. And we'll talk about more of what their roles and responsibilities are in a little bit. Then you have the different crews, like your staging crew, your washing crew, and your breakdown crew. Okay. So all of these, if you have at least one or two people in these areas, or a couple of people who can move from one thing to the other fairly seamlessly, then you're going to have a quick, efficient working kitchen. I've done it with 5 people, 6 people in these positions, minus the servers, and have had a good feast. I've also played 3 of these parts once or twice before simultaneously. It's not necessarily hard. It's not the greatest thing to do in the world either. So, like I said, depending upon what you want. The other part about these crucial supporting roles that you need to understand is they're going to be based on a level of trust that you have with that person. Okay, so you may not be able to be the expediter for this one because you don't know that feast steward very well, but you can be a server, or you could be on the staging crew, or you could be a food prepper, some of those other things that we talked about prior to the actual feast day. So don't be upset if you're not getting in one of these other roles that's a little more complicated, a little more your style, your organization level, those kinds of things, and that's okay. You're going to have to build up that trust with those particular feast stewards to get into that. All right. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to talk about the hall steward. So the hall steward, like I said, is the right hand of everybody outside of the kitchen. The first thing that they do during the feast is they announce the dishes and the various activities. Okay. So whatever the feast stewards are trying to portray. So it could be a set of flavors.
What I might do.
It could be, huh?
Ooh, sorry.
Oh, it's okay. It could be a set of flavors. It could be a particular region. It could be different cooking techniques or the same cooking techniques with different proteins or vegetables or whatever else. It could be high persona. It could be not. It can be above the salt, below the salt. It can be a lot of different things. Whatever they're trying to convey, it is the hall steward's obligation and their role to announce those dishes with the flair that's needed. Okay, so you will have to do some heraldry and some of those things. So you announce the people who are coming in, like the Baron, Baroness, the royals, the other folks, and things like that. And you also set the tone for what's going on at this feast. So again, you may have a lot to say during sometimes and sometimes not. So they also announce activities. In some places, they have different activities that they do in between the removes. Okay, so you may have somebody who's singing, or somebody who's playing an instrument, or somebody who's giving something to the crown. You may have games. I've seen that happen before, where they make marshmallow men, or they do something else, or they engage with the servers, and you guys have, you know, food fights basically with little catapults and marshmallows between the tables or whatever else. And so there you will, as a hall steward, talk about the activities, talk about the rules, encourage people to do some of those things as an overall, and those kinds of things. So that's your main purpose. Another main factor, and sometimes you can do this before, you can do this the day of, you can do this an hour before the feast, is you recruit the servers. So putting the all call out on Facebook, email lists, conscripting your friends, voluntelling your proteges and or apprentices and or whatever else is how you get servers. During the last coronation up here in Calontir, it snowed. So we did not have enough people who felt safe enough to stay. So we just asked for a volunteer from each one of the tables that stood up and became their server for a remove. So even if you have to do that, it's really easy. You just tell them, hey, we're going to go in here, and your expediter helps you with that. So in a pinch, you can do the volunteer a server from a table. But it's really nice to have people who are set out there and doing those things, so you don't have to, you work with the same people, especially if there's food allergies or anything else like that. The third thing is you maintain the drink station. Especially here in Calontir, we have the big got jugs, five-gallon got jugs, and things like that have tea or lemonade or water or secangibin or something like that. And we keep those big ones filled. And while after we've announced dishes and we're watching everything and we check with the expediter, we'll go to the drink station and say, okay, I need more water for this. I need more lemonade. I need more syrup for the secangibin. I need this. And you keep the individual pitchers filled so the servers can come and get those fairly quickly, especially if it's an event that has fighting and you have fighters that are there. They are going to go through water and secangibin quickly. Okay, and you're going to have to keep those refilled. You can also delegate this to somebody else. This is a great thing for teenagers or tweens to do. Anywhere from that 8, 9 up to 11, they may not be able to pick up those pitchers and walk around with ease, but they can fill them up right there at the stations, and that works out really well. The last thing is obviously quality assurance. As the hall steward, if there's an issue that's brought to the servers, you're going to be the person who wants to intercept that before they go to the feast steward. So if there's undercooked or overcooked food, if the crown is not happy with something, if some reason something else happens, something falls, something this, whatever, then you want to be the person that's trying to take care of that before it hits that door and gets to the feast steward. They need to know that everything's okay out there. They have to trust you with that. So that's what that hall steward does, is to keep those things from putting more pressure on the feast steward, because they need to concentrate on the food itself. You need to concentrate on everything else before that. Questions? Do we have anything in chat there, Isabel? I see it going off.
Yep. People were asking about the general alcohol policy on feasts, and they were asking what secondibin was. So I gave them a brief explanation of secondibin, just a vinegary, you know, syrup, sweet drink. Yeah, that's similar. Someone else said it's similar to lemonade. And the alcohol thing is like, I've never served alcohol at one of my feasts, but I've had people bring their own, and we've had a server auction where their server gave them alcohol, but they paid, you know, for that privilege.
Right. And I told Adelaide we talk about the server auction at the Q&A. That's something that's really cool, and I want to give her a chance to do that when we get to that point.
Yeah,
So,
I'd say a server auction is just a very unique standard, you know, way of organizing the servers. So yeah, it's completely separate from this presentation, I'd say.
all right. So, like I said with the hall steward, one of the main things that they do besides announce dishes and do those things is recruit servers. And as a server, you serve the food and drink. Hey, look at that. So serving the food and drink is the main thing that you guys do there. You make sure that you get the trays or the trenchers or whatever you want to call them out. Make sure that all the food is on there. You're making sure it's going to the right, you know, table. You may have one table you're dedicated to, or two or three. It depends on how many servers you have. Probably no more than two, because if you're feeding 6 to 8 people there, anybody who's ever been a waiter, waitress, or a hostess that's had to serve a 12 top, a 16 top is tough. Okay, so, and making sure that everybody has something. Now, again, you're not doing individual stuff, but still, you want to make sure that those drinks don't get down. And if you are lucky enough to get on high table, you are right there. Okay, so they will remember you. Okay, good, bad, or ugly, they'll remember you. I promise. The second thing is that you add ambiance. Okay, in the SCA, we're all minor nobility. Okay, that's one of those things that you have that just adds to it, is having those servers there. People choose to go to feast rather than go to a restaurant because, one, it's a lot cheaper. 2, it's an experience. And 3, they may want to try different types of food. And so you add that ambiance of being there. You also add that personality. You do those things. You know, I have a pirate persona, if you couldn't tell. And so I like to, you know, goad my people into drinking contests, or who can eat this the fastest, or hey, did you like this? Or somebody may say, hey, I'd like some more of this, let me go check in the kitchen. But all those things that a typical server does, you help add that too. You also encourage discussion or games. I've been at a place where these 2 people know each other, and these 3 people know each other, and all of these other people don't know anybody else, and they're all sitting there just eating, and nobody is talking. And that can be fine when you have a lot of food in your mouth. But other than that, how are you going to get to know anybody if you're not discussing anything? So you come over there and you're like, hey, here's a topic of discussion. How did you guys like this? What do you think is going on here? If there's a game to be involved, okay, guys, how are we going to do this game as a table? And you kind of get them involved in that discussion. Now, a lot of times people go with their friends, but if you have one of those feasts where somebody pre-signs up and you kind of get stuck with some folks you don't know, it is hard for a lot of people to just jump in and say, hey, I'm so-and-so, this is what I do, and those kinds of things. And I've been in those kingdoms before where it was me and my husband and everybody else knew each other and we didn't. So having you as a server to encourage that discussion, to ask how things are going or what kind of stuff is going on, and to facilitate that really does add to the experience for the feast. Okay. And of course, troubleshoot issues. Like I said, as the hall steward is the main person before it gets to the door, but if there's issues that you can take care of that don't get there, that's great. You're the frontline defense for that. So obviously more drink, more food, something that could be simple like that. Somebody may say, oh, hey, I needed a vegetarian dish for this, or I'm somebody with an allergy and they said they made something special for me. Do you have it? Oh, yes. Those are the other things that you need to remember when you're going in and getting the food from the staging area is if you have a person with a food allergy or a preference or something else that's sitting at your table, you need to remember that so you can consistently stay with that table and know that you need to get something. And sometimes I'll just write it on my hand if I have 2 or 3 tables, and sometimes I won't. Depending upon who it is, especially if it's somebody I don't know, I won't write their name. I'm like, so lady in whatever dress or so-and-so in whatever hat or blah, 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 because then I'll have to remember who they are. And I'm terrible with names. I'm great with faces. And if you're only getting to see these people for an hour to 90 minutes, you may not remember them. Okay? Questions about being a server? I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory. All right. The next one
Actually,
is
sorry, quick question on the server end. So just kind of looking at that as kind of, when you're talking about the troubleshooting, kind of a chain of command thing. Obviously, if you're asked a question, you don't know the answer, you don't want to bullshit somebody. I'm assuming that the correct order is then to, as a server, go to the hall steward, who then goes to the feast steward.
Yes. Most of the time as a hall steward, depending upon what the issue is, if it's an ingredient issue or something like that, I've always had a list of here's the removes, here's what the ingredients are, here's the other things. Sometimes if I know somebody has an issue, then I'll be like, okay, there's we might have a crustless pie for someone who's celiac, or we might have vegetarian options for this. And so I'll try to do those things. So if something comes up, they can come to me first as the hall steward, and then I can go. Now, not everybody has a hall steward, and that's fine. We'll try to find either the expediter or somebody else, because again, we want the feast steward to concentrate on the feast, but sometimes it's just the feast steward themselves if there isn't anybody else to go into that role. But yes, most of the time it goes from server to hall steward, then hall steward to feast steward. Other questions? All right. So the next one is the expediter, and there's not a lot of people who do this, and I found out with the one and only feast that I've done, having an expediter is amazing. And there's a lot of times that I step into that role when people don't know they need that person, because it just makes the flow a lot easier and a lot quicker and a lot more seamless. Okay, so the expediter is the one who stands basically in the doorway between the kitchen and the outside. And what they do, first of all, is they ensure that the correct removes are on the trenchers and the trays. Okay, so if you know that this protein and this vegetable and this additional side is going here, great. That's what's going to be on there. So they instruct the staging hands on what to do in your staging area. And for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, typically you have a place where all the food is cooked, and then you have a long table or a set of tables that are together that have all the trenchers and trays laid out where they plop the food, like cafeteria trays, so that we can get it all put together for that particular remove. We normally do that 3 to 5 minutes before the next remove is going out, so it's warm and ready to go. But that's what the expediter does, is work with the staging crew to get that and ensure each correct dish is there to go out. Again, they're also the ones that will instruct servers of special dishes if the hall steward doesn't and the server doesn't do it themselves. And this is why I say an expediter is very crucial, especially if you have a feast that has several different folks who have special needs in the dietary aspect. So you may have like 2 or 3 people who are celiac, you may have 1 or 2 who are vegetarians or vegans, you may have somebody who might have a dietary issue, could be 1 or multiple people. Then that expediter needs to know, okay, table 1's doing this, table 3 and 4 have this, table this or whatever. So however the feast steward is or is not accommodating those. And sometimes you're like, hey, this happened at the last minute, I had to use this as a substitution. this person shouldn't be eating this because it has dairy or it has eggs or it has whatever. That's also something that the expediter will need to know. So they'll be much more versed in the ingredients as well. So that does add, Perez, to your previous question, another layer that if somebody has an expediter, again, keeping it from that feast steward. Okay. The other thing they do is they oversee all the other kitchen crews. So when I talked about the cleaning crew, the washing crew, the breakdown crew, whatever else, and this is where the expediter does just as much work as the hall steward. So you have your right hand outside, which is your hall steward, and you have your right hand inside, which is your expediter. And these two people work hand in hand. I work very well with Dante DePiro as my hall steward and his wife, Baroness Chiara, as my expediter, because they know how to work with each other. They've been married forever, and they know how to work with me because we work so well. I'm typically either the hall steward, the expediter, or both for Isabel. That's my blood pact. And so I know how she works. I know what she wants. She doesn't have to tell me multiple times. I can just go and do that. When I've stepped into the kitchen and become an expediter for people when they didn't know they needed it. Like in Batavia, one time I stepped into that role and said, okay, we're going to do this, we're going to do this, we're going to do this, and we're going to do this because we can streamline this process. And that Feastocrat was very receptive to that, just because they had a lot of people who couldn't make it. So finding an expediter is not necessary all the time, but it is really great to have a go-to person. So if you can get both a hall steward and expediter, I highly, highly recommend it. Okay. So let's talk about the kitchen. Well, are there any questions about the expediter? I know this is a different one. A lot of people don't use them. So if there's any questions. All right. So we'll hop right into the kitchen crews. So the different kitchen crews that are there, first and foremost, is your staging crew. And if you've done your self-assessment and you know that your mental capacity is to do very simple tasks, this is a great crew for you to be on, because this is absolutely monkey see, monkey do. Okay.
Sabina, real quick, there is
Yes.
a question in the chat that's asking if the expediter helps plate the food.
Yes, they are on the staging crew because they lead that. That is the first. If you were to look at them in order that we'll talk about these kitchen crews here in my presentation, this is kind of how they go. Is their staging crew is their primary, washing crew, then breakdown crew. So yes, most of the time they will be helping do that, especially if there's not enough people or there isn't anybody else for the staging crew. A lot of times the expediter will be doing that in addition, if not in lieu of. So, they get all that? Awesome. So, like I said, the staging crew is very monkey see, monkey do. This is another one that's great for simple tasks. People who haven't been in the SCA very long, who are just getting acclimated to a cook type culture, may not be experienced in the kitchen. It's really easy. You scoop this, you plate this, you do this, you do this. You know, can all this fit on this trencher? Can you do this? So the staging crew are the ones who get the trenchers, get the trays, get the bowls, get the serving utensils out of whatever container they're in, and they prep those trays for the next remove. Okay. And so the expediter is the one who oversees them and says, okay, we have 12 trays and we have 12 proteins and 12 sides and 12, and they make sure this one's going to high table, the expediter does, but the crew sits there and they stage those. Okay. So very simple task, really easy task, great one, like I said, for newcomers and things. Excuse me just a second. The next one is the washing crew. And this one comes into play, especially if there are not enough trenchers and trays for every remove you want to do. I've been to a feast that's had 5 removes, been to a feast that has 3. So depending upon how many tables you have, that's how many trays you're going to need. So what happens is when those servers bring them back from the dining hall into where your area is, the washing crew is the one that clean off all the food, wash them down, and either throw them through a big like commercial steamer dishwasher or rinses them off and preps them for the next use. I always recommend you have at least 2 to 3 removes, because if you actually have to use soap and water on some that might have gluten or something else, you want to make sure that those particles are off of there. So if you have for 3 removes, that's great. If you only have for 2, that's okay too, but you need to have more than for 1 remove. So you need to have at least 2 dozen trenchers or trays of some sort to make it easier to go through and for the washing crew. Okay. Now, in between those removes, where they're removing the food and they're recycling the trenchers and doing all of that stuff, especially if you have a kitchen where you have a commercial dishwasher, which is always amazing. If you don't, that's fine. 2 people on the washing crew, wash and dry, works out really well. They clean the cookware in between. So all the big pots that your Shire, your Barony, or the feast steward brought that they're taking back home needs to get washed at some point in time. I don't want to stay there till midnight. You don't want to stay there till midnight. So they wash those in between when they have time. And a lot of time your washing crew starts before feast. So they can start getting those things done. Okay, cutlery, cookware, all those other things. So this crew is going from the 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock. If your feast is at 6, they start then and then continue to go throughout feast towards the end. So you definitely want to have at least a couple of people in place so you're not there for forever. Of course, the last one is your breakdown crew. These people, again, start about the same time, slightly before feast. So when you have your excess vegetables, you have, your excess whatever else, they start packaging, putting up, storing, getting all of those things from the first couple of removes that haven't been cooked or whatever else. Your raw vegetables, they start putting that away, getting the coolers packed, getting those other things. They're the ones that try to make sure that you have enough Ziploc bags, Tupperware, foil, whatever, so that all that excess food that isn't going out, because you're always going to have some, gets put up or portioned out. Because a lot of times the servers will eat either after or they may eat before. And then, of course, as a feast person, you don't want to take 50 pounds of a whole bunch of excess food home and put it in a freezer. So you're trying to find people to give it to. The other thing the breakdown crew does is they clean the kitchen and the dining room. And so as the washing crew is taking over the cleaning of the cookware, the cutlery, and whatever else, you're wiping down the appliances, cleaning and sanitizing the staging area, doing all that other stuff. You're also putting up tables, putting up chairs, vacuuming the floor. You may not always have a professional cleaning crew that's coming in. I know a lot of people who use religious establishments like churches, cafeteria halls, and those kinds of things. They may hire a crew that comes in, especially if it's on a Saturday before a Sunday, and things like that, but you don't always have that. So having people who are gonna be your designated breakdown or cleanup crew is great. And sometimes that breakdown crew ends up being your washing crew, ends up being your staging crew, because once you get that last remove out, you're done as a stager. You can go straight to breakdown or straight to cleanup or whatever else. Also, you may have people who are committed to coming afterwards. So they do something in the morning, they can't be there, their spouse, their significant other, their whatever stays for feast. They come after while that person is doing other things, they're helping clean up. So again, your commitment does not have to be 14 hours from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m., whatever, all day at an event to help be kitchen support. You can be kitchen support in a lot of areas in a lot of different ways. So these crews, being an expediter, doing any of those things, doing the hall steward, actually during the feast, the things that we talked about in the first one before, there are a lot of opportunities there. So questions? I'm going to stop sharing so I can see. And I'm going to go ahead and throw up the file again for the handout for this one. Hey, there we go. And I will go ahead and put the first one. Does anybody want the first one who didn't make it to part 1? I know that Gavin had asked, I hope I pronounced that right, Gavin. And I had put that up before, but if anybody wants that, then great. Maeve? You want the
Yes,
first one?
please.
Yes,
Yes,
ma'am.
please. I couldn't get into the first class for some reason.
There was something wrong with the link, they told me, and that's fine. You know, I had a lot of, I'm surprised. I had a lot of people. I was really excited. I didn't think there was that many folks who were going to be like, hey, let me come and work for my day off. But that was great. So questions about hall stewards, servers, expediters, any of the kitchen crews, troubleshooting, anything that you guys have had before that my minor experience can help you out with? Nothing. Awesome. Then I did my job.
I'm curious, Sabina. When you're talking about expediters, you have that as a position that you would basically hire in. Do you ever look and say that you'd rather be expediting as the feastcrat, or is it something that you pretty much exclusively prefer to hire in?
Yes, you can. When there are a lot of SEA cooks out there that are, if I don't do it myself, it ain't gonna get done right. And in addition to concentrating on the food, they will also expedite. I try to encourage those folks that are like that. Yes, you can do that, but for your own stress management, it's probably not the best idea. Hiring out, conscripting, finding a pelican to get their protege, voluntelling, or having a blood pact with somebody is a lot easier because it takes that weight off of them to continue counting 12 for this or 8 for this, or I got to make sure I have this dish with this thing or whatever else. And that just takes a level of stress off them. So if it were me, for sure, I would always try to do it with an expediter so that I don't have that additional level of stress. And I can put that off on somebody else so I can concentrate on the food, on the flavor palettes, on the taste, because in the end, they're not going to care if it's a period lentil soup or a period rotel dip. That's a joke. They want it to taste good and they don't want to go home hungry.
Do you try to get your expediter ahead?
Yes.
Before
I try to get my
Tuesday?
hall steward and my expediter ahead, at least those two.
So I can say from experience, I'm one of those feast stewards that will, if left to her own devices, do all the things. And she's laughing because, like, I think that blood pack formed simply because she tried to keep me from killing myself one day, and it sucked. And honestly, part of her job is to make sure that I don't do all the things because I will try to sneak away and do them. As the feast steward, you know, it's really de-stressing to have someone that you can trust do those things.
All right.
I learned a long time ago to have a plater. That's what I call it. It's somebody who plates the food. Because once I'm done cooking it, it's been in my nose and in my head for weeks. And once it's done cooking and I have done my part of the job, I don't want to see it again. I don't want nothing to do with it. Here's what I want you to garnish it with. Make it pretty. Get it out of my sight.
Make it happen, and I don't want to touch it again. I completely get that, and that's why your expediter is the go-to person from that.
Honestly, I rarely eat my own feast food because I've seen it, I've dealt with it, I've tested it. At the end of feast, I want a chocolate chip cookie and a hot dog. Not, you know. I mean,
she wants to go through White Castle. I mean, like, I'm not gonna lie, that's true.
First of all, it's crystals, and yes.
Sorry.
Or Whataburger, you know.
None of us ever eat our own feast. I take home a Ziploc bag full of feast, and I eat it on Wednesday after feast. My go-to for supper time, and I tell fledgling feast crats, make something that you will never say no to. Love macaroni and cheese? Bring a container of macaroni and cheese with you, because even though you will not think you're hungry, your body is starving. So make it something that you love and that has no relation to anything you've cooked over the last 2 weeks. And make sure that
Protein
you
drinks.
eat it.
Protein drinks. I'm telling you, the Atkins ones are great.
I like roast beef subs.
Stuff like that. I have a lap band, and so when I'm under stress, trying to eat is not good. So I will drink the crap out of some protein drinks, chocolate milk, something that's high caloric, like a frappe or a frappuccino or something, to keep my energy up. Yes, I'll crash later, and yes, I know that. But during the feast, that's what I need. Looks like I've got a couple of questions here. Grace said, how do you get your name out there as somebody who can help? Just start. I mean, literally just start being that person. It doesn't matter if it's always in the kitchen or not. You can walk in and say, hey, do you guys need any help? Do you need to do anything else? If somebody's unpacking a car, just start helping. Okay. If somebody's putting up, chairs, thrones, just start helping. Get there early when the site opens and say, hey, I would love to help do this. What can I help do? Because you're going to have anybody who's going to literally take up on that. And when you're that person, they will look for you. Like I said, I'm a pirate persona. I have a big, big purple hat that I wear. As soon as I get on site, they're like, hey, Sabina. Yeah. I mean, like, it never fails.
I'm very disappointed that you did not wear your hat today, Sabina.
I'm sorry. Do you want me to get it off the shelf and put it on? I can't wear my headphones with it.
I do.
Okay, I'll put it on in a minute. So so that's one of the things that they know me for. The other thing is that, yes, I've been conscripted because literally they say, you have a yellow belt, come here. That's true. That's true. I totally do. So that's one of the ways that you can get out there. If you know people who help and volunteer a lot, then start. Once you get your name out there as helper, you will never not be without a job, Grace. I promise you.
So I do want to add something to that. As someone in the kitchen, there are some times in the kitchen, especially if you're the type of feast cook that does a lot of prep work, and you're in there and maybe there is just 1 or 2 tasks to do for that amount of time. Sometimes people will come in during these dead zones and ask to help. And sometimes they say, well, not right now, but you can come back later. We mean that. We're really not just trying to get rid of you. Like, sometimes for certain periods, literally the only thing to do for this hour is to chop these 7 onions, or these, do this thing or do this thing. So if you are told, no, right now, thank you, but come back later, they really do mean that. They're really not just trying to shove you off.
So for the next few minutes, I'm going to let Adelaide talk about that server auction. It's a little unique of something that she does in her shire, and it's cool. And for her benefit, I will get my hat and wear it. So Adelaide, I'll let you talk about that, and I'll grab my hat real quick.
Yay. I mean, I was in the middle of a marshmallow, but it's okay. So anyways, the server auction I started in our shire. Was it 5 years ago, Isabel?
I think so.
Isabel was the feast steward, and I ran the servers. So, so what I did to recruit servers is, instead of just asking people to help in general. What I did was I recruited people to not just help, like sign up like a month in advance to help, but also to create something or provide some kind of unique service to the table that won them at an auction. So, am I too loud? No, she's just. All right. So for example, I know we discussed some alcohol earlier. One of the more popular items is to offer is a bunch of alcohol. You can bring some wine to be your thing. I know paternosters, or it was my first year, so I actually called them poster nosters by accident. By accident, I got the girl's name right. She had a very Russian name. I said her name correctly, but then when I said what she had to offer the table that won her at auction, I said, you know, she has some poster nosters. So that was very amusing. But basically, she made, since the feast was set up for tables of 8, she made 8 paternosters, and whatever table pooled their money together and bid the highest for her in specific, she got to, you know, give them all each a paternoster. If it's somebody that brought wine, then everybody gets a sip of, you know, a drink of a glass of wine or however much they have. Obviously, if it's any kind of booze, you can't, you have to make sure that anybody that's underage is not drinking any, not even a sip, because, you know, for obvious reasons. Yes, it's a fundraiser. So some of the things that we have done, fundraised for is, I believe that first year we did a local pet shelter. We have done a veterans, some kind of military veterans fundraiser. Just a bunch of different. I think MS. We did an MS relief, or something like that, for our fundraiser. Just any fundraiser that that was near and dear to our hearts and to our kingdom's hearts. And obviously that first year we had to do a lot of notification, so people didn't just show up to feast and then have like their entire table full of people that didn't have any money to donate, which is fine. They still got a server, but they got one of the servers that, you know, showed up last minute and said, hey, I'd like to serve. And it's like, great. They would get one, they just wouldn't be auctioned. So we might have 6 tables and we might have 4 servers to be auctioned. Basically, you're buying your friends. So that's, yeah. So basically you're buying your friends, or at least renting them during feast. I've had people that have used their servers to instigate trouble, which is a really great option. Basically, once a table has won you in the auction, then you are at their mercy, so to speak. You provide them entertainment. You really dial up the charm. If you've got allergies, or if you want some extra food or something, then they'll try to, you know that they're really going to do what it is that you need, because you just paid for them. So it's a really popular thing at our Feast of Eagles to have a server auction. We have, I think the highest amount that we have raised for these fundraisers was it $1,700, Isabel? Do you remember?
I think it was more than that, and that was the one we did a few years ago for the
Right.
wounded warriors, or like mental health for vets or something like that. Like, it raised a crazy amount of money.
Yeah, it was insane. Like when they told me the amount, I was like, I know there's a one there that shouldn't be. Like, did you misplace the decimal? That must have been a typo. No, it was not a typo. Yeah, so but when you have 6 or 8 people pulling their money together and auctioning, also I should also mention, don't get into a bidding war with the king, because you're gonna lose. I mean, their majesties typically will, they know who they want, and they're gonna bid tooth and nail for them, and they're gonna get, the server that they want. So, hands down. I mean, yeah, well, push the money up, because it is all in fun.
Stand up. Stand up.
But that's just, it's all in fun, and it's for a great cause always. And everybody has a good time. Sometimes if the neighboring table wins something that you don't, or that you want to try, then you might be able to send some of whatever you got over to that table and convince them to do like a little trade for a bite. I've seen that. Like, if one table got a server that's got wine, and another table has a server that brought baklava, and and they want to do a little bit of a trade for a little sip of wine around the table for a little tiny bite of baklava around the other table, then that's great. If you have a very English server that you want at auction, and Her Majesty is a very French majesty, and you want your server to go up to Her Majesty and sing Frere Jacques in the worst way possible, the most off-key ever, then, go right ahead.
Stand up.
And, they might be up for that. So that's just a different kind of setup for how to organize your feast servers. And it's really a lot of fun, and it provides a lot of entertainment along with the dinner. Everybody likes to sell their friends, right? Because I know I do.
Of course. Well, thanks for that, Adelaide. Is there anybody else who has any questions for me? We've got about 5 minutes before 5 o'clock.
Back up.
Well, 5 o'clock Central Time. I'm not sure where everybody is, and we'll be closing down the symposium. I'm sure, I don't know, Isabel will have to chat about that. But does anybody have any last minute questions for me about Expeditors or anything from my first presentation or anything else?
You'll be there if I do Spring Crown, right?
Huh?
I'm just kidding. Not really.
You stink. Yes, of course, I'm going to be there. Blood packed. Anyway. All right. I appreciate you guys joining. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. And Isabel said that my 2 handouts will be on the website within the next couple of days. There are some links that are in the chat. I'm going to link them one more time if you guys didn't grab them. And yes, Maeve.
This is about the day in general. The classes that got recorded, are they going to be on the webpage? Is that where we're going to find them?
Yes, they're going to be on the webpage. I am learning how to use YouTube to post them on the webpage. Just give us some time,
Okay.
because it's a lot, and they're kind of funneling through one person, so it gets done in a very methodical way. And so it'll be there. I'm hoping to get everything up by the end of the week.
Okay.
So yeah.
Thank you. And
welcome.
thank you for the class. This is awesome.
Thank you. I appreciate it.